Now we want to hear him pop the beer cans open.
Go. Oh, tonight it's cheap
Okay.
Vino Rojo.
All right,
Okay.
so we are on YouTube now.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and pound the meeting to order. This is the June 2021 general meeting of LA Astronomical Society. First thing I will do is I will go ahead and make some general announcements. Number one, the first thing, general announcement, is Tim Thompson online yet?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
Yep.
Okay, good.
I just dropped in. Are
well,
we
we-
being
we-
recorded?
Yes,
Huh?
we are live on YouTube now.
We're
No, I
being
mean,
recorded.
Is
Okay,
the Zoom
we
session
got
being
a
recorded?
we got an email from Griffith Observatory about a welcome back event or soft opening. Welcome back to the Griffith Observatory. This meeting is on. It's actually an in-person meeting. You have to go online and sign up for it. I think we can release this to the general membership, and we will have Spencer put it on the. We probably will have a general have Andy send out a message on it to give the link, and Spencer can supply the link for the general meeting. And that is, I mean, it's a meeting. It's a get together at Griffith Observatory on Friday night. I think it was 5 to 7 p.m.
Wait,
So just huh?
Friday night, what date?
This Friday.
This Friday.
I'm sorry, what's the didn't the Griffith folks provide a Zoom link already for that
Yes,
meeting?
they provided a sign up link, not a Zoom link. This
I-
is an actual in-person meeting.
Okay,
I
so
sent that message to the board earlier today, so you can see it on the board email.
Yeah, so
So
I'm
that's-
assuming this is probably okay. Let me see the thing.
Well, it's primarily intended for the Star Party volunteers to register, but you know, we have lots of people that volunteer for Star Parties at GOs.
So that's Friday the 18th?
Yeah, unfortunately, that's not.
Yes, this Friday.
Yes, this Friday, the 18th. Yeah,
And-
unfortunately, I will not be able to attend that meeting because it's a bad time for me.
What time?
It's too short. Huh?
What
5 to
time?
7 p.m. on Friday.
I'm
So
a
it's bad-
volunteer there, and I can real quickly I can tell yeah, if you go on when you get the email, you can sign up. They will give you a pass through the email through Penny. What's her name? Is it Ricky? Right? What's the lady's name?
Nikki.
Nikki Gordon.
Nikki. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You have to sign up in advance, so you have to wait for our email to come out, which has the link in it, so you can register in advance. You can't just go; you have to register in advance.
What is the meeting about?
It's just a welcome back to
Good night,
Griffith
Rob.
Observatory, soft opening, as they say. It's not really a meeting; it's just go to Griffith, as far as I can tell.
Curtis, this is Ricardo. Are you saying that we would get permission to park at the same level of the observatory?
I have no idea. All they told me was, here's a link, register in advance, and
Okay.
that's it. That's all I know. So
Hey, Tim, I know you don't know much. I just wondered, I didn't mean that the way that sounded. About this event, is it expected that this will be just to come out without a telescope and hang out and say hi?
Yes,
there
that's
will
what
be
it
no
is.
observing.
Okay,
No
so
observing.
this is kind of a let's go back to Griffith
That's
for the
right.
first time this season.
That's right.
And if you're an hour or 2 hours late, then there's no difference because you don't have to set up a scope. You go out to say hi.
It's only 2 hours long, from 5 to 7. There is another event after that for another group, but we are not invited to the second portion. So there's 2 sessions that day. It's mainly for the what used to be called Friends of the Observatory, the members who
Okay.
support the observatory. And so I see that they have opened it now to LAS members, primarily, like Tim was saying, who volunteer and help out at the observatory for the start at the observatory. But it is only from 5 to 7 p.m. So you're going to want to arrive at 5 or, fairly soon after that in order to really enjoy the 2 hours.
Okay, Penny, this is a really dumb question, but I was under the impression that as LAS members, we were quote unquote friends of the observatory. Is that not the case?
Definitely not the case. The Friends of the Observatory is a group. Well, they've changed their name just in like a few weeks ago, but it's now called Griffith Observatory Foundation. But it's basically a group that helps support the observatory financially and in other ways, but primarily financially. So like that big renovation, 5 years ago when it was, that was largely supported by them. All the new upgrades to equipment recently, like in the planetarium, the sound system, the visual system, things like that are provided by the Friends of the Observatory, now called, as you can see, Griffith Observatory Foundation.
Interesting.
Anybody can join. You can go on their website, the Griffith Observatory website, and join. And they just started a new membership profile, and it's 60. The starting membership starts at $65 and goes up. So you can choose, and at each level has different membership benefits. But the main benefit is, for the intrinsic value of supporting the observatory, which we all like.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
I clicked on the link, and yes, parking is provided for 1 vehicle per party. So that's the details on it. As soon as we get this out, then you can take a look at it and make the decision on going. I'm still up in the air. I may or may not be able to go. I'm not sure at this time. I got a big meeting going on Thursday, so I'm not sure how long it's going to go. But anyway, so that's the detail. That's the latest on Griffith Park. Surprisingly enough, because we on the board of directors were thinking that the Griffith Park may have been one of the last things to actually open up to big crowds, and it seems to be that at least Griffith Park is probably maybe suffering a little bit of financial woes, and they need a little bit of money coming in. So that could be a case. But anyway, let's go on. Last update on Garvey Ranch Park. Last week, I sent back a signature form to amend the agreement we had with Garvey Ranch. And as soon as I get that, I got to find out the best place to send that, because they'll probably send it to Griffith Park, and it may take 2 months to get it. But they were asking us to think about reopening. They basically said that sometime after June 15th, we'll figure out the protocols and what we need to do to open up Garvey Ranch. Tim and we were there a month and a half or so ago, and we did a walkthrough with one of the councilmen from the city of Monterey Park. And we noticed that we are probably going to have to do a major cleanup and disinfectant of the facility, because we walked in there, the spider webs, and there could be some other rodent problems and things around there. So we really have to do a cleanup before we decide to go back in there. But as soon as we get a clearance from Monterey Park, then we will go in and clean up the Monterey Park facility. Okay, so let's get on to the agenda. First thing I'm going to ask on the agenda, how many new members do we happen to have? Do we have any new members online?
I am one.
You're a new member, Ari?
Yes.
Okay, welcome to the club.
I am also new. Hello, my name's Amy.
Oh, hi, Amy. How are you? Welcome to the club.
Thank you very much.
I think you're going to have fun once we get things going again. I think you're going to find. I think you'll find you'll like this club. What kind of a background do you two new members have? Amy, what do you have? What kind of background do you have?
So I'm actually just recently getting into astronomy. My dad was a physics and astronomy teacher for 35 years, and I actually am from the arts. So I'm coming to it a little bit late in life, but I'm mostly interested in doing astrophotography and observation, and yeah. So
I think you'll have a good time here.
thank you.
Ari, do you have a background, a little bit of a background on you?
I'm in mechanical engineering at UCI. I'm a senior. I have done like astronomy type things for like the past year, a little bit of astrophotography. But I was just kind of here to, learn from you guys, because you guys probably have a lot more information to impart.
And,
Well, welcome to the club.
and we also have Bruce.
And another new member?
Yeah, I just recently joined, and I don't have any background in astronomy. I'm retired, and I felt like I needed something to push my energies towards, and so this is what I decided on.
Bruce, I'll tell you what, 3 years ago, I was you. I'm a photographer for a living. I like to take a lot of pictures. I've done a lot of accidental astrophotography, like Milky Way crap and all that. But when this group helped me put together a telescope with a camera and turn it into proper pictures, having zero background in astronomy. So understand me, it can work. And the people in this club are brilliant at teaching idiots like us how to find something out there.
Another question, Ari, I got another question for you.
Yep.
Are you actually lived out in Irvine area?
No, I actually I transferred there last year during the pandemic, so I've been living at home. So
Okay, so home's in the LA basin, not in Irvine, basically.
Yeah.
Because there's another group down in Orange County called the Orange County Astronomers, and they meet at South Coast College down in, I think it's South Coast College in Costa Mesa, wherever it is down there. But
Okay.
that's another group. That's another group down there also. But since you're up here, welcome to LAS. Okay, do we have any other new members? Okay, so I think we can go on. A couple of other announcements. We are being recorded on YouTube. Also, during the talk, use the chat feature for any questions or comments to our speaker. And during the time that the speaker is speaking, everyone will be muted when the speaker starts, so we do not have any interruptions to the speaker. Okay, so we'll go on to the door prizes. Please go online and fill out the, Spencer will supply a link to fill out your name for the door prizes for tonight's club. And Alicia has some door prizes will be given out at after the speaker talks. Okay, now we're going to go a little bit to our the honorary life membership. We have one other honorary life membership that we wanted to.
I'm sorry, Curtis. I forgot to take that off
last
the.
month.
That
Did
was
you give me
last
the
month.
wrong agenda?
I forgot to take it off the agenda.
You told
Sorry.
me for okay. Well, anyway, the honorary life member nomination we had for last month was what was his name again? Bob Nolan. He primarily hangs out at Garvey Ranch. So yeah, I'll take that off then. Spencer. Oops.
Yep. Sorry about that.
That's fine. That's fine. We'll go on to the committee reports. First, we will talk with Lockwood Valley Committee. John O'Brien, are you online?
Yes, I'm here, Curtis.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and give a little bit of Lockwood Committee update?
Not a lot to talk about. This won't take very long. So 2 Saturdays ago, we had weed whacking day. We had 7 hard workers show up, and we got the weeds cleared around the pads. We think we got a pretty good clearance on that. I think we didn't clear the whole area. We concentrated on clearing around the buildings, around the pads. This last Saturday was dark sky night. And again, I think there were 7 people there, but I wasn't there. Spencer can probably give us a little more information on who attended the dark sky night and how that turned out. Spencer?
Yeah, I think there were 7 people there. I think
Not the same 7.
no, not the same. Well, there was a 50% overlap.
Yeah.
So, but
How
yeah,
was the viewing? Was it clear?
was very, very clear. There's, the light dome from Valencia to have to contend with, but once Milky Way cleared that, it was pretty spectacular, I thought, and it was got down to about 42 degrees, and so it was quite chilly. But other than that, it was a good night. Mike, you were there. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, other than I was arguing with my equipment all night long. It was a nice night.
The only problem we had was that it took Mike 4 hours to get there, and took me 3.5 hours because there's a accident on the I-5 right near Gorman, so traffic started backing up near Pyramid Lake. Yeah,
Again.
Jesus.
And so by the time I got there right around sunset, just in time to get out of my car and start to do the sunset talk. But I was so flustered that I didn't really get a chance to do what I wanted to do. So I just set up and did a couple of things with my scope. But otherwise, it was a great night.
Thank you, Mike and Spencer. So we're hoping to restart the family nights eventually. We will see what California actually comes out with as far as mask restrictions this week. And so we'll publish.
John, this is a dumb question, because if we're talking about LA, as of tomorrow, we're all good to go. But once again, we're back to Ventura County. But now, because of the California statements that I've been hearing, doesn't that put us, meaning Lockwood, at the same level where tomorrow it's all over?
California
It's up to the
does not have a separate public health department. So Ventura County follows state health department regulations. So yes, Lockwood Valley is subject to California, the same rules as the state, as published by the State Department of Health. And we are required to abide by those. However, we may choose to be more conservative than the state requirements. And
okay.
So that will be decided at a later date.
Is that going to be decided by our board, or are you guys looking at something else?
Any decision like that would be made by the board.
So we're not officially back to open access with no masks with vaccination as of tomorrow.
We just have to wait and see. That's basically everything that we're dealing with right now, is waiting to see what actually happens tomorrow when we actually get opened up. And the decisions will be made by the board of directors.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. John, are you finished?
That's it.
Okay, sounds good. Last Saturday night, there was a Mount Wilson 60-inch half night. I'm assuming it went very well. Is anybody online that actually went to that meeting, to that event on Mount Wilson at the 60-inch last Saturday night? Nobody online went, but basically,
so I went, and it went pretty well, except unfortunately we did not have marine layer, and scene wasn't as perfect as it could have been, but it was great.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Can
So,
I
yes.
jump? Sorry, Curtis.
Yes.
Can I jump in with a quick question about the 60-inch? Today, I got an email that to sign up for the 60-inch.
That's the one for July.
Correct. Within I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes of receiving that email, I went and to sign up, and it was all zeroed out. Now, is that a problem with the website, or did it really sell out in 30 seconds like a golf tee time does?
I think we'll have,
Daryl. Sorry.
I think we have to wait till Daryl Dooley makes a comment on that. And Daryl's not online, I don't think. I don't think he's online, so we'll have to ask Daryl. Do you have any updates on that, Spencer, at all?
Yeah, just again, Daryl set it up so I think he does not want you actually signing up until you talk to him. Because what happened last time was that people went ahead and signed and paid, even though there's no, without talking with him. And so there's no more room. So there's a bunch of people who paid, but they couldn't go. And so he had to refund, I think, you know.
Got it. Well, no, what happened is that I did it within the first, I literally within the first minute, right? And I went straight on because the email came in and I went, okay, cool. I went and clicked and I linked and I did it. And the instant I linked and I saw, look, I knew I was toast. It said remaining available for every single date on the list was at 0. And that's what made me think it was broken, because if every single date that they had discussed for 2 months was 0, I thought it was broken. So I said, okay, fine, do it anyway. But it wouldn't let me pay.
Yeah, we'll let Daryl take care of the glitches or whatever he's doing, because he's the one that is responsible for the 60-inch half nights on top of Mount Wilson.
Yeah.
So
no, Curtis, the only reason I bring it up is just to mention that there is an issue that we probably need to figure out.
I heard something on that also, and like I said, Daryl is the one that's going to have to answer the question on that.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Now, I think we're done with the Lockwood. I think we're done with Mount Wilson. Okay, the Ford Observatory. Joe Phipps and I were up there last Saturday night, and it was actually fairly decent seeing. We had the same problem that Mount Wilson probably had. It was not socked in down below. And also, we've got the problem with the high desert lights. It was reasonable. We were able to see some pretty good objects on at Ford. Now, the Ford committee is planning on opening up Ford for July 3rd and July 4th, the 4th of July weekend. And we also have another event that we will be hopefully setting up a booth at the Mountaineer Days in Wrightwood. That's a community festival that they do every year. And we've had a booth there before. And hopefully I'll be able to get into Griffith Park and Garvey Ranch to be able to get the canopy and the banner that we have for the table. So we're planning on applying for a booth at Mountaineer Days. It does not cost anything because we are a nonprofit organization. We want to do that because we want to at least let the community of Wrightwood know that we're up there and make a presence. Last time we did this, we had about 2 or 3 new members sign up in Wrightwood. So it does happen. But anyway, that's the plan for Ford. Okay, I think we've taken care of all of the pertinent committees. In fact, Greg, do you have anything to say about the Scouting and Education Committee if you're online?
He's not on.
I don't hear Greg,
but
so I'm assuming he's not there. So we'll go on to our guest speaker for tonight is Dr. Thomas Spirock. Spencer, can you give the information about our speaker? Appreciate it.
Sure. So I just reposted the link for the door prizes in the chat. So go ahead and register, and we'll close it out right after Dr. Spirock finishes his talk. So his title is Lucky Imaging Results Using the 13-inch Schupmann telescope, Stellafane, and the 6-inch Warner and Swasey refractor at Mount Wilson. And I confess, I had no idea what lucky imaging was until I read his abstract. So he's going to talk about the lucky imaging techniques with the 13-inch f10 at Stellafane and the 6-inch at Mount Wilson. And then he'll also talk about the advantages of the Schupmann telescope and the history of the refractor at Mount Wilson. and then talking about the lucky imaging techniques, and then show us a list of images of the moon, Jupiter, Saturn, and other images. So Dr. Spirock has been a member of the Springfield telescope makers of Stellafane since 1989. He was instrumental in building both the 13-inch Schupmann and McGregor observatories of Stellafane. He got his PhD from New Jersey Institute of Technology, where he worked to develop the latest iteration of solar vector magnet. I can't even, I'm tongue-tied tonight. Magnetograph at the Big Bear Solar Observatory in Southern California in 2005. So during the past few years, he's been applying the lucky imaging technique to data collected from both the 13-inch and 6-inch scopes and the 16-inch f10 Meade catadioptric and 60-inch Cassegrain telescopes at Mount Wilson. So Dr. Spirock, I'm going to turn this over to you if you want to do a screen share. I'll stop sharing. Okay. You're on mute. Okay, great, perfect. Yes, got it.
Okay, I'm gonna disable my video to save the bandwidth.
Hey Spencer, do you want to mute everyone?
Yeah, I'm going to mute everybody. Hang on 1 second. Okay, looks like everybody's muted now.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, hang on. All right, I think we got it. All right. Go ahead.
It says my screen sharing is paused. Is that me or you?
That's you. I see your screen. I see the first slide of your deck.
One second, sorry. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I guess we're all set. Thank you for inviting me for this presentation. If I don't mind people interrupting me with questions, and if someone wants to monitor the chat, at the moment I can't see it, and I think even if I could see it, I'd rather not pause to read chats. So if feel free to interrupt me at any time. And also, if I temporarily go quiet for 5 or 10 seconds, I'm just clearing a frog from my throat. I have a little allergies. Okay, so as we saw, this is about lucky imaging and results from the 13-inch Schupmann telescope Stellafane and from Mount Wilson. Do you see that the page changed? So this is our brief outline. So very briefly, I'll talk about what is Stellafane. Okay, thank you. I'll talk about what is a Schupmann telescope and why do we want to use a Schupmann, some recent improvements to the Schupmann. Just very briefly about the 6-inch Warner and Swasey refractor. Lucky imaging technique, it's not really a how-to. There's really not time in a presentation like this to get deep into the details, so I'll just kind of skim over the process and then talk about some latest results, including some high dynamic range imaging and also some ancillary results. So very briefly, what is Stellafane? Strictly speaking, as you see at the bottom, the name Stellafane is a concatenation of Latin stellar and the Anglo-Saxon fane. It literally means shrine to the stars. And strictly speaking, the name Stellafane is the name of the pink clubhouse of the Springfield telescope makers in Springfield, Vermont. However, we have since history is not the point of this presentation, I'll just give a very brief skimming. the Springfield Telescope Makers has been holding the Stellafane Convention since 1926. So the name over the years has been come to be associated with the convention. Now, in Springfield, Vermont, the Stellafane and the Springfield Telescope Makers were started by Russell Porter. And I was just doing a little clicking around your web pages, and I see that you're acknowledging Russell Porter as being instrumental in starting your organization. So there's no need to really get deep into Russell Porter. But here's a picture of Russell Porter basically doing what he did best, working on telescope mirrors. And if you're interested in digging into some more information on Russell Porter, there's a biography by our club member, Bert C. Willard, which you can get used on the internet. And the purpose of the Springfield Telescope Makers is to teach people how to make telescopes. And the club has been doing it for more than 100 years. This is a picture of the first class, which was started on August 17th, 1920. So it's just over 100 years old. The first meeting of the club was December 7th, 1923, and the first convention was July 4th, 1926. And history is very important to us. These are two pictures. The one on the right is from 1954, and the one on the left, actually, I can't see the, 2015. And you can see that they're essentially the same. We like to keep the place as historic as possible. And if you want to have more information, see more information, you can go to our webpage. If you have never attended our convention, you definitely should try to make an effort. And if you're ever in the New England area and like to stop by for a visit anytime, just let us know and we'll make arrangements. So now we'll get on to what is the Schupmann telescope. Schupmann telescope was basically a combination of refractor and reflector type telescopes. It was developed by Schupmann in Germany about 150 years ago, and it's been developed basically since then. And basically at the moment, the most advanced person making Schupmann telescopes is Jim Daly. He's one of our club members, and he wrote a book about it published by Wilman Bell, the Schupmann telescope. Obviously, we don't have time to get into the super details in a brief presentation, but you can buy this book if you're interested. And there's a picture of Jim with an objective he made in front of his observatory. So now the question is, why do we want to use a Schupmann telescope? Well, when we're taking pictures of various astronomical objects, the real goal is to capture the most subtle details on your target as possible. So you have to try to get an image that has the highest contrast possible. So the Schupmann telescope is designed to minimize all the problems that reduce the contrast. And this is a pretty comprehensive list. It's a perfectly achromatic refractor, so there's literally zero color in the final image. It has no central obstruction, so there's no scattering from a central obstruction. It actually can correct for the atmospheric dispersion. Any amateur that's looked at Jupiter or Saturn in recent years, because it's so far to the south, perhaps you see that the part of the Jupiter and Saturn, for instance, the top can be red and the bottom can be blue, for example. And that's because that the light is going through so much of the atmosphere. The atmosphere is becoming like a prism, and it's breaking up the light. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. But this telescope can correct for that. It does use some mirrors, and the biggest mirror is a back surface mirror, which we'll talk about shortly. And back surface mirrors, all mirrors scatter a little bit of light, but back surface mirrors scatter less than front surface mirrors. Also, it uses smaller mirrors than the primary aperture. And of course, the smaller the mirror, the less it will scatter. That particular type of back surface mirror, it's called a Mangan mirror. And it's basically easier to make than objectives for refractors. And all of the optics are spherical, which is another aspect of ease in construction. So again, we talked about the color. As any amateur knows, when you look through, say, a refractor, there may be some color. That's called chromatic aberration. It's because that each color of light is affected a little bit differently by the glass of the lens. And this shows an example of a single lens and how it breaks up the color. So the blue focuses short, the green focuses middle, and the red focuses long. So this would produce a very poor image because all of the colors focus at different distances from the lens. And this chart here on the right shows where the x-axis is the wavelength or the color, the y-axis is the focal length, and this shows that in a simple lens, which is our blue line here, that every wavelength of light focuses at a different distance. So this would give a very poor image. So one solution is to add a second lens, and that helps you a little bit. You see here we're focused a little bit better. We now are plotting on this red line, and we see that in the visible, which is from 4 to 700, we have a much better focus, but it's not quite perfect. I'm sorry, this is the yellow line. And again, it is somewhat better than the blue, but it's far from perfect. And we of course could also add a third lens, and now we're even better. And again, we're on this approximate red line, and we're getting much better than the simple lens, but it's still not quite perfect. Whereas the Schupmann is this black line, which shows that the focal length of every wavelength of light is the same. So here's a basic schematic diagram of a Schupmann telescope. The star light comes from here on the left side. We have a single primary aperture lens. In the case of the Stellafane Schupmann, it's 13 inches. And that light comes to a focus on a field mirror, which is about 2.5 inches in diameter. And you see here that all of the colors are split up. And this is not a flat mirror. This mirror has some power. And what it does is it re-images the objective onto this back surface mirror, which is called a Mangan mirror. And as you see here, both sides of this mirror must be polished and figured very accurately, and the reflective coating is applied to the back. So the light literally goes through the glass, bounces off the silver, comes back out the glass, and this is designed such that when it comes out of the glass, all of the color has been fixed, and what comes off is white light. And then we simply put a diagonal as you would in a Newtonian, and you put your eyepiece or camera, and you have a very nice color-free image. Another advantage of a Schupmann is it does not have a central obstruction, just like a refractor. One second, I lost my cursor. Okay, so here's an example of a person demonstrating their telescope at the Stellafane convention, a simple standard Newtonian. We see it has a central obstruction. This upper simulation on the right is a simulation of a perfect telescope with no central obstruction. And down on the bottom on the right, we see a simulation with an obstruction, and we see that the central obstruction scatters light into the outer portions of the image. And this will reduce the contrast, and we will lose our fine detail. Again, another reason we talked about why we want a Schupmann is it can correct for the chromatic aberration caused by the atmosphere. So here in our little cartoon, we have Saturn, which is low on the horizon in Sagittarius like it is now. White light comes from Saturn as it passes through the atmosphere. The atmosphere splits it up like a prism, and what we see is a blurred image where the colors are separated. No other type of telescope can fix this problem, but in a Schupmann, this field mirror, as we're setting this up and constructing this telescope, this field mirror is constructed on an XY tilt table. So this can be very finely controlled tip and tilt, where the correction of the color is a function of the tilt. So this half of the telescope, which corrects the color, it doesn't know or it doesn't care where the color has come from, but it can repair it as we adjust very slightly the tip and tilt of this mirror. So in the back of our telescope, near where the eyepiece is, there are some knobs, and we can in real time just change the tilt of this mirror and fix this color. Another reason, again, we talked about scatter, because scatter will reduce the contrast of the light. And again, as we back up here, we have basically the field mirror, which is 1. We have the Mangan mirror, which is 2, and then we have a standard diagonal, which is 3. So we do have 3 mirrors which cause scatter. However, they're much smaller than this primary objective. The area is about a total of 1/2. So basically, a Schupmann telescope has about half of the mirror scatter as a Newtonian of the same aperture. Also, the individual elements are easier to make. First of all, most of the curves are smaller than the primary aperture. They're all spherical, and the wedge sensitivity is much less. So even though the general design is more complicated and it does require some extra structure and extra mounting, etc., the individual optics are easier to make. And this on the right here is a picture of the Mangan mirror. That's Jim Daly shining a light on it. And this is the back surface mirror. So this is essentially like a lens where the silver coating is on the back. And so this is a schematic, another schematic of the Schupmann telescope. This is actually a piece of art painted on the wall of our observatory. Here on the right, you see the Schupmann on its mount. This is, we have it in a roll-off roof. So this is the eastern wall, and one of our members painted this cutaway drawing as Russell Porter might have done it. So again, here on the right, we have the 13-inch primary single objective lens. The light focuses on the 2.5-inch field mirror. The light diverges to the 8-inch Mangan mirror and then refocuses to our eyepiece or our camera. And back here on the left is where we have the knobs which control the tip tilt of the field mirror. So we'll talk about some improvements, and of course this isn't quite an improvement, but it's always good to have clean optics when you're trying to get very subtle details. And a 13-inch objective lens tends to collect dust, so you have to make sure it's clean. And while you do have to be somewhat careful, cleaning optics is not necessarily as much a witchcraft as people may think. We literally simply use literally Windex and Bounty towels. And this is what we're taught from very, very experienced people working at MIT. That's what they use, Windex and Bounty towels. And here's a picture of our nice clean lens, because dust on the lens would scatter light. So even though we have a very good telescope, the scattering of the light from the dust would reduce the contrast of our image. So we want to try to preserve the quality of the telescope. Also, coatings on mirrors don't last forever. This telescope was basically built in the early 90s. It was commissioned in 1995. And this is the Mangan mirror. Here on the left, we see the front, where the coating again is on the back. On the right, it's the back surface. And over the years, the silver coating was starting to deteriorate. So a few years ago, we had it recoated. It was stripped, recoated, and the back of the mirror is painted black to help to preserve the silver. And this is Jim Daly remounting the Mangan mirror in its cell. This is the cell of the Mangan mirror. This is on the left, Jim Daly checking that it's mounted correctly. Here on the right, it's completely mounted and it's ready to be reinstalled in the telescope. And after we reinstall the optics, this is a picture of the field mirror. It has a cover over it to protect it from dust. Up on top is our right angle mirror to divert it for eyepiece or camera. And it's always good to check with a laser that our optics are aligned. So here on the right, we have a laser. We see that the laser's hitting the center of the mirror. So we know that the Mangan mirror went back in its cell in the same condition it came out of, and all of our optics are nicely aligned. Now you should be seeing a movie. This is a set of image of Saturn taken very rapidly. And as amateurs who have looked at the planets know that because of seeing, the image is wobbling around a bit. And of course, this deteriorates our image, and this is probably our biggest problem we have to deal with. Just one second. So one way to avoid this problem or to minimize it, many amateurs know that especially on nights of bad seeing, small telescopes give better images than larger telescopes. So one advantage is to put an aperture stop over your telescope. So what we did is we installed what's called a Leo stop. That L-Y-O-T with the accent is pronounced Leo. It's a French name. And it's basically a way to easily reduce the aperture of our telescope from 13 to 9 inches on nights of poor seeing, which in Vermont is basically most nights. So why do we want to use a Leo stop? Again, it's to help our seeing. And the scientist David Fried basically was a physicist who studied the dynamics of the atmosphere. And he basically did a scientific study of what every amateur, as we just discussed, sees, that as your telescope gets bigger, everything else being equal, the seeing will get worse. And these are just two examples of some papers. We're not going to talk about it in any detail. If anyone would like the copies, I can send them. But basically, what he determined was this value P, which is the probability of getting a good image, is this equation. And what this means, capital D stands for diameter, which is the aperture of your telescope. The larger the diameter, the lower the probability. And this R0, which is called the Fried parameter, and that is the size of your seeing cells. And the better the seeing, the larger this R0. So as R0 goes up, the probability goes up. And this is a plot of that equation for different apertures of telescopes, where the x-axis is the Fried parameter R0, or the quality of the seeing. So on the left side is bad seeing, and on the right side is good seeing. And the y-axis is the number of images you have to take to get a, quote, good image. So this shows, say, the comparison of a 12 and an 8-inch telescope. Say on a night of average seeing, for example, here, if you have a 12-inch telescope, you would have to take 2,000 images to get a good image. Whereas if you stop your telescope down to 8 inches, you would only need 10 images. So this shows the very great improvement of stopping your telescope down on nights of bad seeing. So in our particular case, instead of covering the aperture of the telescope on the front, we have installed this Leo stop, and we basically do the same thing by applying a cover with a hole in it over our Mangan mirror here in the center. And here's Jim Daly installing the Leo stop. Inside here is our Mangan mirror again, and this is our Leo stop. So in the case on the left, this center hole here makes the telescope an equivalent of 9 inches when the Leo stop is in the optical path, and when it's folded up out of the optical path, as in on the right, we're at our full 13 inches. And instead of doing it with a motor, we kind of did it the old mechanical Stellafane way. We actually just did it by rods and levers. So this is Jim Daly installing a rod into the telescope where we have access to a knob. And as we push this knob in and out, the Leo stop will fold in and out of the optical path, as it shows on the two cases on the right. So it enables us to very easily and quickly change the aperture of the telescope. So that's basically it on the Schupmann. I have done also some work using the 6-inch Warner and Swasey at Mount Wilson. I imagine that many of the members have been to Mount Wilson and seen the telescope. This telescope is one of the oldest on Mount Wilson. I believe it's been there about since 1910. For many years, it was in storage in the Snow Solar Telescope when a modern telescope was installed in this dome. This is the dome that is basically just to the west of the 60-inch dome. And then several years ago, John Briggs, who's a former employee at Mount Wilson, was rummaging around, found it, and basically restored it and mounted it back where it belongs. And it's basically all original, including, as we see here on the right, this is the original weight-driven clock drive. And the picture on the left side of the pier, this is the original 100-volt DC motor, which automatically raises the counterweight, which drives the weight for the right ascension drive. It, in general, still works fine. It does drift a little bit, and when you're taking high power images or high power observing, you do have to, from time to time, adjust it. But it basically still works. And it has a Warner and Swasey, well, it's a Warner and Swasey mount with a very good lens, a Brashear lens. All right, so now we'll talk about lucky imaging. So lucky imaging is the process of capturing and saving many short exposures as rapidly as possible and selecting the good images to be aligned, average, and post-processed later. And there are basically 5 steps to lucky imaging. You capture the raw images and save them to your hard drive. You pre-align them if necessary. Then you select the good images, align and average them. You do some wavelet processing and then whatever other processing you want. And basically steps 2 to 5 are all done later after you capture the images. And so the idea is, as we saw in the image of Saturn, which is kind of jumping around a bit, and as we've seen when amateurs look at the planets, if you stare at the planet long enough, from time to time you'll catch a moment of good seeing, and you will remember it. In this case, we collect all of the images, the bad ones and the good ones, and let the computer find the good ones and throw away the bad ones. That's why it's called lucky imaging. If you take enough images, eventually you get some good ones. And again, here's the example of Saturn. So most of these images are not so good, but every once in a while you'll find a good one, and we keep that. We keep that one and use it. So the first step is you need to have a camera that takes and saves images as rapidly as possible. I happen to use the ZWO cameras. These aren't the only, that's not the only company. There are others. It's just the ones I happen to use. They have cameras with small chips that are relatively inexpensive. The advantage of a small chip is you don't need to, there's no point in buying a large chip when you're only taking an image of a planet, because a planet is very small. So why pay for the money to buy a large chip that you're not going to use? However, if you're doing a large target like the moon, then you want a large chip to capture as much of the moon as possible. Of course, the penalty is the larger chips are more expensive. And then you also probably need a filter wheel. You may or may not want to use a color image. It depends on the situation, which we'll also get into a little bit shortly. So these are the, in addition to your telescope, this is some of the hardware you need. Fortunately, a lot of the software is free. So what I use to capture the images is called Fire Capture. It's free. The author is in Europe. He's constantly editing and improving the software. He's available for questions. And if he does a good job, you can send him a donation. But this is the program that runs the camera. Obviously, you see the moon there on the right. This left side is you setting up the camera. You can set your gain, your exposure, you set your target, your filter, and then this is kind of just like a CD player where you click on the start button and the camera will take pictures as fast as it can, save them to your hard drive until you tell it to stop. And the output of this is a video file of all of your original raw images. And it could be hundreds or it could be thousands of images in your video. So one thing is you do need a relatively large hard drive because these videos take up a lot of space, especially when you're imaging the moon. The second step is you have to possibly pre-align your images. Sometimes if your drive is not behaving properly, or with the Warner and Swasey telescope at Mount Wilson with the weight-driven drive, it kind of drifts around a little. And this program will, it doesn't adjust the images, it just makes sure that the planet is not jumping around too much. And again, this is free. This third step is the actual lucky imaging portion. And this is where we do our selection and alignment. So the first step here on the left is you open your video file and you analyze it. And the result of the analysis is this chart where the x-axis, there's actually two x-axes simultaneously, but in general, this gray line, the x-axis is simply the number of the image. So in this particular case, we see here there are 4,976 images in this video. So here on this chart, we have image number 1 on the left and image number 4,976 on the right. And the y-axis is the quality. So we see, because of the seeing, the quality is jumping around. And the green line is simply the same data replotted where the best image is on the left and the worst image is on the right. Then after you do your analysis, you have to decide how many of these images that you want to keep, the best n images you want to keep. My preference is I always use a value of 2 to the n, so 1024 or 512, 256, whatever. There's no rule about it. There's basically a trade-off where the more images you use, you'll get less noise in your final result. The problem is the more images you use, you're going to be using images of less and less quality, so you're reducing your contrast. So you basically have to have some experience where you realize how many images you want to use to get the best quality. You also have to set your alignment boxes because these images are still moving around a little bit, so the computer has to align them before it averages them. And this is an example of a single picture of Saturn, and I chose to have these alignment boxes. And then you simply click stack, and then it goes through and it will pick 1,024 of these 4,976 images, and it will then save the result. And again, this is a free program. And the output is a single image that is the average, and then that's the basic result you're looking for. So this is the final result, and this is another program called Registax, which is also free. And this is where I do my wavelet processing. There are other ways to do it. This is just how I happen to do it. And you can adjust these slider bars to adjust the details on your final image. And this is your final image. In this case, is Saturn. And we see we have a pretty nice image here with nice sharp rings. We can see the nice bands. We can see the hexagon at the pole, and we can even see up here on the top, you can see a little bit of the planet through the Cassini division. And your output is your single image, and you're basically finished. So now we'll go through some examples, now that we've gone through the very basic procedure. This is an example of Saturn, Mars taken through the Schupmann telescope in August 2018 apparition. And if you recall, that year there was a very bad dust storm on Mars. So in the visible, all of the features were obscured, but with an infrared filter, you could see through the dust. So we use an infrared filter. This is a set of 6 images taken several minutes apart, and you can see how Mars is rotating a little bit. And in this particular instance, the seeing was not that great, so we had the telescope stop down to 9 inches. This is a blow up of Mars from that same apparition, and this is where we did a kind of a quick example of 9 inches versus 13 inches. Obviously, one disadvantage of the 9 inches is you're getting a little bit of less light, which you see this is a little darker. So perhaps our images is a little more noisy, but we have the trade-off of it's better seeing. Which image is better is perhaps for you to decide. This is an image of Jupiter. Again, from 2018, we were using the full aperture, 13 inches, and this is with a red filter. Obviously, we have the great red spot here in the lower left. And there's a lot of fine detail here. And this is a very good image for Vermont seeing. Vermont seeing is much, much poorer than Mount Wilson. This is an image of a comparison of Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, and they're all at the same scale. This was the same night, July 4th, 2018. We had it stopped to 9 inches. And this is the actual size on the sky relative to the 3 planets. So you can see that at opposition, Mars is very big compared to Saturn. Normally, of course, Mars is much, much smaller. Hold on one second, please. Yes. Yes. Okay. This is an image of, or set of images of Jupiter. In this particular case, we were using a color camera, which we can see here by the in the ZWO. The MC means we're using a color camera, and in 2019 Jupiter was very far to the south, even more south, farther south than it is now, and there would be color fringes on the top and bottom of Saturn if we were not able to correct it with the Schupmann telescope. And you can see, look closely, there's, we'll blow these images up next, but you can see the rotation of Jupiter here by looking at these features. This is just 3 examples from that previous set, just blown up a little bit bigger, so you can see some more detail. And there's a lot of subtle detail in the near the poles. And then this is the best image from that set, blown up large, and the circle is 1 arc second. So you can see we're getting our detail on the order of perhaps 1 arc second, maybe a little bit less. And that's very, very good for Vermont seeing. And that's the advantage of the lucky seeing, lucky imaging technique. And here's an example of Saturn. A comparison, 9-inch versus 13-inch. Again, the color camera. Again, the nice colors on Saturn, the polar pentagon, and Saturn through the rings, or hexagon, I forget, perhaps it's a hexagon. And there's just a blow up of one of these. And again, this dot is 1 arc second. So we're getting, our bands are on the order of 1 arc second, perhaps. just another image of Saturn. And this is Mars from last September 2020. However, this, as we see here in the ZWO name this was with a monochrome camera, and we used red, green, and blue images taken separately to create the color images. And the reason this was done is because we also wanted to use the infrared filter. So we used a set of 4 color filters. So the top row is a combination of red, green, and blue, and the bottom row is infrared. And the seeing wasn't the greatest that night, so we were at 9 inches of aperture. And there's a lot of good, nice, subtle detail we can see. So another target can be the moon, and the moon is a good subject for high dynamic range imaging. So here on the left side is what I call the quote correct exposure for the moon. This bottom box on the left is the histogram of this image on the left. Histogram is simply the x-axis is simply the brightness of the pixels in that image. This is an 8-bit image, so this picture is simply a grid of numbers to a computer, and all of those numbers are between 0 and 256, where 0 appears here on the left side, which is black, and 255, which is complete saturated right here on the right side. So the normal correct way to set an exposure, you want the brightest part of your image to be about 2/3 to 3/4 between black and white, and that's about this region. So this brightest region is represented by these pixels, and this darker region is represented by these pixels. And that's, I define this as the quote, and this is typical, the quote correct way to set the exposure. The problem is the exposure really isn't correct for these darker regions. So what we do is instead of using 1 exposure, we use 3. This exposure on the left side was 1 millisecond. The exposure for the center is 1.5, and you see that some of these bright areas are now too bright. And then the exposure on the right is 2 milliseconds. The lighter areas are saturated, but our exposure for the dark areas is much better, and we're going to get better detail and less noise in that region. So the idea is to take these 3 exposures and then combine them into one picture. And so this is the result. So this is, in this particular case, this is with the Schupmann telescope. And because it's such a long focal length that even with a camera with a big chip, we had to do a montage of 6 images. And 6 pieces for each of the 3 images. So it took, there was originally 18 videos, which had to be converted into 18 pictures, which had to be stitched together into the 3 different exposures and then combined into the one final high dynamic range image. And this raw image is 7,500 pixels across. And just as an example, if you were to print this out at 200 dots per inch, it'd be 3 feet in diameter. And this picture on a small screen does not do the quality of this image justice. It's quite impressive when you print this out 2 or 3 feet across. And the software to do the high dynamic range image combination is Photomatic Essentials. That's not free. It's on the order of $50, but considering what it does and how easy it is, I find it worth it. So now we'll have some results from Mount Wilson. This is a set of Mars from 2018 with the 6-inch Warner and Swasey with a Brashear lens. And with the 6-inch refractor, you have to use a monochrome camera with color filters, and I'll show a picture on the reason for that shortly. But these are combination of red, green, and blue images over the course of not quite 3 hours. You can see the rotation. And of course, the seeing at Mount Wilson is very, very good. And this is an image of Jupiter, color image, again, combination of red, green, and blue, and Saturn, also red, green, and blue. However, you notice that in Saturn's case, and slightly in Jupiter, there's kind of a blue haze. And the reason is, as we look down here on this schematic of chromatic aberration, the chromatic aberration in the blue part of the spectrum for that telescope is very severe. So normally you would use a red, green, and blue filter, each having 100 nanometers bandwidth. However, the blue has such chromatic aberration that we need to use a filter of only 10 nanometers bandwidth. The advantage is we can now focus in the blue. The disadvantage is we're cutting away 90% of our light, which means we need a longer exposure, which gives, when you have a longer exposure, it gives the atmosphere longer time to make a blurry image. So in this particular telescope, the blue images always tend to be a little blurred out compared to the red and the green. But there's nothing you can do about that. It's just a feature, essentially, of this lens. This is a comparison. This is obviously Jupiter. A comparison, not on the same night, but within a few days of each other, of images taken with the 6-inch refractor, the 16-inch reflector, and then the 60-inch, all at Mount Wilson. Again, combination red, green, and blue images. And this shows that, first of all, the quality of the seeing is very good at Mount Wilson because of the very good detail we can see with the 6-inch. And we also have a lot of very good detail with the 60-inch. However, in my opinion, the best of these images is with the 16-inch. And this is perhaps a factor of, again, as you go higher and higher in aperture, your seeing naturally becomes worse and worse. So perhaps at least a combination of these 3 nights, the seeing was the best, and the sampling of the atmosphere was the best with the 16-inch. But there's a lot of good quality, subtle detail in the all of these images. Now we'll go through some moon. These are all, this next set is going to be with the 6-inch at Mount Wilson. These are all monochrome in red light. This is all high. These were done with high resolution on a small portion of the moon. Obviously here we have straight wall in the Theophilus region. The Stoffler and the Cassini region, again, Mount Wilson, 6-inch. And these are all high dynamic range images, so combination of 3 exposures. This is obviously the whole moon, again, with from Mount Wilson. The right image is the single, quote, correct exposure with the histogram set as shown on the right side, where the left image is the high dynamic range combination of the 3 images. And it becomes more art than science as to which is better. It's really just what you prefer. This is obviously full moon from Mount Wilson, and this shows the very good quality of the seeing. The right image is a simply, I just just cropped this image around Plato and blew it up to this size. Nothing else has been done. It's the same piece of the image, but you see all of this tremendous detail on the floor of Plato from a 6-inch telescope is quite tremendous. So that just shows the quality of the seeing at Mount Wilson. Just as some ancillary images, this is, you don't really need much to do some decent imaging of the moon. This is a 4-inch f9 refractor with a red filter. Again, this next set of images, the left side is going to be the normal exposure and the right side, the high dynamic range. Again, 4-inch f9 refractor with a red filter. And also, this just shows the advantage of this high dynamic range imaging. The image on the left is the result of a video taken from an iPhone. I did not do the video. I downloaded it off the internet, but I did the processing. And the right side is an image from Mount Wilson. Of course, the Mount Wilson is tremendously better, but considering the source of the video, the left side is pretty good and shows the advantages of doing the high dynamic range imaging. And also, this is the final slide. The high dynamic range imaging isn't exclusive to the moon or planets or anything. This is an image I took in the fall of Stellafane. The standard exposure is on the right side, and then the left side is I converted it through the high dynamic range process. And I just think it, from at least from an artsy point of view, it looks much better. So if anyone is ever in the northern or New England area and like to stop by, just let us know. We always like to give tours to interested people. If anyone has any questions.
So this is, hi, this is, go ahead, this is Spencer. So
Spencer, a lot of
people can unmute themselves.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, this lucky imaging technique is already incorporated into programs like Registack, and it's just a matter of picking the right your cutoff for the images.
I do not use Registacks for lucky imaging, and this is just my personal preference. I use Registacks shown here for wavelet processing only. What I use for lucky imaging, the selection is AutoStacker, which is shown here. And this is the program which takes your video and per your settings will go through the video and select the quote best images and make sure that they're aligned and then average them. The idea of averaging is you reduce the noise of the single image by averaging, and the noise goes down to the square root of the number of images. Mm-hmm. So an image, if you average 100 images, it has 1/10 the noise of a single image. And that's the advantage of averaging a lot of images. But I use AutoStacker for that process.
Okay.
There is a question from Andreas to everyone there. Did you see that?
Yes. Are there diminishing
also,
returns to using more than 3 exposures in the production of an HDR image?
I'm sorry, say that again. I
so,
can't the text.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm looking at the chat now. So actually, let me just take the chats in the questions in sequence. So first one is from Phil Taylor, who says that his electronic telescope does a lot of this automatically. Phil has a an EV scope. Um,
But it's not good for planets. It's really not
Right,
made
yeah.
for that.
Right. So another question from Andrea. Have you experimented with any planet derotation software such as WinJupos, which compensates for the rotation of planets over long imaging?
I have not done that myself. I know people who do. I just haven't done that myself.
Okay. All right. Next one from me. Are there any diminishing returns to using more than 3 exposures in the production of an HDR image?
You, 3 is the minimum. You can use up to 5, I believe, with the particular this this program, Photomatic Essentials. You can use anywhere from, you can use 3, 4, or 5.
Can I jump in? I'll jump in on this one. I shoot what you guys are calling HDR images every day for my architectural and real estate work, as well as anything that I do that has to do with long exposures. I never shoot less than 5 exposures, and I shoot 2 stops in between so that I get an insanely wide range of dynamic range in the captures. All of the softwares that are going to deal with putting them all together later are going to deal with them the same way. So the more images you capture with the wider amount of range will just give you more dynamic range in your end result. 3 is a minimum. 5 is perfect. I do 5x2.
Okay.
That's all certainly true. And there is, depending on what you're doing, however, for instance, the picture I'm showing here of the moon, keep in mind there's a montage of 6 different videos. So in a case where I did 3 separate, I had to take 18 separate videos, convert them into
We want to open the windows for a while tonight to cool off the bedroom.
pictures, and then
we can
stitch them together. So the more, so basically I would have to do that 6 more times for every exposure. So it gets to be somewhat onerous in the amount of work you have to do later, the more and more separate exposures you want to combine. So it's just a matter of how much work you want to do. In order to do 5, now you'd have to do 30. So it's just a matter of work versus benefit.
Sorry, yeah, I actually hadn't considered that aspect of your setup that you're talking about, the video part of it. And in video, trying to do that you'd have to do videos of all 5 different exposures to then combine. That could be onerous. I was thinking from the standpoint of still images.
Sure, if you're and I do the same thing when I'm taking a landscape. It's easy to just, you can set the camera, either take 5 separate exposures or set the camera to automatically do that. Say if you're on a tripod, and there's really no work between, you take the images and then you feed them into the high dynamic range program. In the case of the moon, however, there's a lot of work in between those 2 steps. And in the case of, for example, this picture I'm showing, every exposure is 6 more videos, which have to be turned into still images and then manually pieced together before you feed them into your final processing. So yes, it does a good job, but there's also a lot of work to it.
Understood. Thomas, one last question. Is there a reason that you're only working in monochrome on these instead of color?
Well, there are, for example, these images here of Jupiter is color.
Oh, no, understood. I was talking about that image of the moon.
But, well, yes, because I'm sure that I'm sure that this could be for some debate that whether or not the moon has color. I kind of like a monochrome image of the moon. I don't know that there's a lot of benefit to having a color image of the moon. Part of the problem, or one thing I don't like about color imaging of the moon is when you have a camera with a color image, you're not getting really all of the pixels of that are the same color. When you have a monochrome image, you have a grid of pixels, and you have that kind of in a raw state. When you buy a color camera, what they do is they put little filters over each of the pixels in a pattern. So they're not all red, green, or blue. They kind of scatter them around, and it has to do with the physics of how the eye works. But the point is you kind of lose color resolution when you have a color camera.
Thomas, sorry, I didn't mean it in the sense of color camera. I've never shot an astro image with a color camera. All of my stuff is monochrome, but with filters. And my moon, I don't know, I guess the word I'm looking for is my aspirations to shoot my ultimate picture of the moon someday is going to be a monochrome image with LRGB filters and turn it into something color after the fact. And that was my question for you, was not why are you displaying it in black and white? I didn't realize you didn't shoot it in black and white.
Yes, when I shoot the moon, I use a monochrome camera with a monochrome filter. Yeah, there's nothing wrong if that's what you want to do, and perhaps it's something I can do. I just have to think about doing it. What I've noticed, and there's also, however, keep in mind a trade-off with the colors, because with seeing, each color each color is affected by the atmosphere differently. Everything else being equal, red color is affected less by the atmosphere than the blue. It's basically the reason why the sky is blue. So everything else being equal, a red filtered image will have better seeing than a blue filtered image. However, the trade-off is the resolution of the optical system is better in the blue than it is in the red. So you have to trade off resolution versus seeing, because sometimes if you have bad seeing, even if you have good resolution, you're just getting better resolution of a blurry image, which is not useful.
That's a good segue to Steve Cooperman's question, which is usually smaller diameter scopes have more limited resolution than larger diameter scopes. Because of atmospheric seeing, you're saying that you gain because of the atmospheric cell size, just take more frames?
Okay, well, there's a trade-off there too. Yes, as a general point, you can take more frames, and yes, because the more frames you take, just as the definition of lucky imaging says, the better chances you have to get higher quality images. The problem is that only applies to a static target. But the problem is none of the targets, and I'm not talking about the rotation of the Earth, and so targets are moving across the sky. The targets we're looking at are fundamentally changing. For example, Jupiter is rotating. The shadows on the moon are changing. They're subtle, but over the course of minutes, you can see it. So the lucky imaging technique only applies to a static image, and we're not looking at static targets. So, and it depends on the focal length of your instrument, but basically you don't want to image Jupiter more than 1 minute or so, because after 1 minute, you're going to start getting rotation. So as you average more and more image, you're going to start blurring your features because your features are moving. Mars, perhaps you can go to 2 minutes. So there's always benefits, but there's always a penalty that comes with that benefit. And another penalty is the more images you take, the longer your videos, you're going to fill up your hard disk faster. It takes longer to crunch. These moon images, take hours to just the processing. So, yeah, there's every benefit has a penalty.
Okay. Let's see. One from Phil Taylor, U.S. Army studies in 1946 determined that due to cell size, a 3.5-inch aperture is optimum. Questar uses this as their criterion for their telescope, 1950.
Well, I don't know that there's any quote optimum aperture size. It all depends on it's optimum for the atmosphere you're standing under. So Mount Wilson statistically has a better seeing on average, but not every night at Mount Wilson is good. So sometimes the 60-inch shows good images, and sometimes it has bad images. But it's just that the 6-inch will have more good nights than the 60, but the good nights on the 60 are much better than the 6. So I don't think there's any quote optimum. It all depends on the seeing you're standing under and what your goal is. Because sometimes, for example, I don't necessarily whenever I shoot a planet, I always make sure that I'm sampling the image such that I'm capturing all of the possible detail that the telescope is capable of. But with the moon, I don't always do that because, I mean, how many 3 feet across images do I need? And so sometimes I'd rather just take a single image of the moon, a single frame, no montage, and save a lot of hours of processing, because filling my hard drive up with pictures of the moon that are 3 feet, if you print them out, it just kind of it's doing kind of work that's really never going to be appreciated.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions? If you
Dr. Spirock, this is Dave Yackerson. First of all, I want to thank you for being here tonight. This is I'm really enjoying your lecture this evening, and that you have a wonderful speaking voice, and the way you lay out everything is tremendous in your speech here. How often do you get up to Mount Wilson, and are you able to use those scopes?
I get there general once a year, sometimes twice. I'm trying to arrange a trip for mid-August when Jupiter is at opposition.
Oh,
and
okay.
basically I use the 6-inch and the 16-inch quite a bit, and the 60-inch when I can.
That's great.
Thomas, you're in the Northeast, right?
Yes, I live in New Jersey.
That's what I thought. Okay. That would make it harder for you to use Mount Wilson. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah, I basically make 1 or 2 trips a year. And unfortunately, last year, of course, between the virus and the fires, I was not able to go. It's a shame because the fires were just at the time that Mars was at opposition. Would have been very nice, but obviously the fires canceled that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't
the
it was the smoke.
The red sky would have given you more help.
Well, Mount Wilson, I mean, I was following, it was literally surrounded, and I know they did have smoke damage to the monastery. They were very lucky and very skilled firefighters that saved the place, but they, I think, were literally within feet of fire damage.
Oh yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Tim is still online. He could tell you horror stories about what last year was like. He was on campus for most of it, I thought, but
No,
Tim, you still there?
I
there you
am.
are.
They're not going to let me go up there during a fire. Dave Sendejas was there, and I don't know who else was in him. I think the fire department threw everybody off the mountain except David and maybe a couple, maybe John and Larry Webster, I guess. But the fire burned The road that goes down from the 60-inch to the monastery was originally supposed to be taboo to the firefighters because you could get trapped there very easily because there's no way out from there. But they went down that road. The fire burned within maybe 3 feet of the cabins along the east side of that road and burned right up to the monastery. The fire front on the mountainside, probably about 30 feet, but the flames were very high and they swept up right basically to the monastery, which is why the antenna between Garvey Ranch and Mount Wilson doesn't work right at the moment. So the fire did, unlike the station fire, invade the campus, but the firefighters protected every structure. There's no fire damage. There was some smoke and ash damage, but it was watching the webcam and watching the fire actually burn across where that road was kind of nerve-wracking. I've been there for 40 years, and I'm wondering if half my life has just been wiped out or something by the fire, but fortunately, no. But we had updated all of our firefighting equipment. And if David ever comes back to give the talk he was going to give on the Bobcat fire, he'll tell you all the gory details. But yeah, it was pretty exciting.
Okay.
Okay. So can we go on now?
Sure. Let me, I just reposted I'm just posting the link for the drawing right now.
If one last thing, if anyone has any questions or would like some other information, just send me an email.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay,
great.
Robert, that was a fantastic talk. I'd be kind of interested to do some, I want to try to get a little more into astrophotography myself, but you're right, as far as the last year, the opposition to Mars was quite good because Joe Phipps and we went up to Ford, and I think it was like in October of last year, and looked at Mars, and it was absolutely spectacular. We had an absolutely beautiful view of Mars back in October, and we saw so much detail on that planet. It was phenomenal at Ford. Okay, well, anyway, I think we're okay. We got the last call for the door prizes.
All right, go ahead. Go ahead and register if you haven't. I'm going to close it out in a few seconds. So, Alicia, you want to take over?
After I unmute.
Who is Kathy? I'm viewing somebody's screen here. Let me just.
I know. I was gonna say, whose screen is that? I'm the diver in the group.
Hang on.
Nice. That's a decent shot.
I'm going to stop sharing that one. Okay. I don't know whose that was. Somebody was sharing their screen.
That's a cool background.
Yeah. Okay. So, anyways, Alicia, I'm going to close out the link for the drawing right now.
Okay.
You want to talk about the door prizes while I do that?
Yeah, so we have 9 door prizes tonight. They're exciting as usual. We have the $25 Amazon gift cards we're giving away. We're giving away LAS hats. We're giving away website items, so you can pick like an item from the website of your choice. We have red flashlights that we're giving away, and also a laser, because I just ordered a whole new batch of lasers. So, yay.
Yay, lasers.
They're cool. I love them.
Right?
And they come with this really cool filter that lets you split it into multiple little lasers. So yeah. All right. So that's what we got on our line. And
that sound in the background just now that was there by accident sounded like the bucket turning over with all the balls in it.
What?
Oh, you didn't hear it?
No.
There was a very kind of motorized sound in the background, like a bucket of balls turning over.
Oh, okay. Well, it is Zoom, so it happens.
Okay.
You ready?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Let me let me display the screen. So let's see, share screen. Okay, so I'm going to pop the names in there. Okay, first one is Bruce.
Bruce Wataro won a $25 Amazon gift card. Yay!
Great, thank you.
Okay, let's see. Okay, let me take Bruce off.
Bye-bye.
All right.
No hard feelings.
All right.
Hang on just a second. What happened here?
Something
You broke it.
I broke it. Jeez, hang on. All right. Excuse
Gross
me.
Shame.
All right, let's try this again. Okay, yeah. All right, here we go. All right, next one is Mike and Jinky Gardner.
They won an LAS hat.
Okay.
Thank
You'll
you.
have to-
Let me make a suggestion. I won the hat last time, so I think I
Oh.
should give it back to you folks and let you give it to somebody else. I
Well,
don't
I
need
can
two
swap
hats.
items. I can give you something else.
Well,
Does that
if that,
work?
I would appreciate that very much.
Okay, so I'll swap. Do you want a website item
Sure.
instead? Okay, so I'll move that over. Okay, so the next person's gonna win an LAS hat.
Thank you very much.
See, and I was about to say, how can they both wear one hat?
Yeah, I know.
I know.
Well,
I was like,
my wife does not wear a hat. She
Oh,
won't
there
wear
you
a hat. But thank you very much.
okay. So I'll swap that over. There, done. I could
Okay.
have gotten a pencil instead.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. Here we go. Next one is Ricardo Gonzalez.
Ricardo Gonzalez Jr. Okay, so he won an LAS hat instead. Okay.
All right. Okay, Elizabeth Wong.
Elizabeth Wong won a red flashlight. I feel like
Okay. David Yackerson.
won an Amazon gift card.
All
There you
right.
go,
I'd
Dave.
like to give that. Thank you. I'd like to
What?
give that, and I'd like to give that back to the group. Thank you.
Oh no.
Okay.
What?
I wrote it down. I only have so much room on my paper to write this down.
Oh, Carol won again.
Yeah, Carol won again.
Okay, so Carol card. So that really technically goes to oh my gosh.
Curtis.
Curtis, thank you.
Curtis.
All
Give it to
right.
Carol.
Carol's saving up for a new eyepiece, right, Curtis?
All right.
Ah, here you go,
Tim,
Tim.
yeah.
All you.
Boy,
No time.
what did
He
I
won
get?
He got an LAS hat this time. He's getting
Hey, I could
everything.
always use another hat. Yeah. Cool.
All right. How many more we got?
3.
Ari?
Nick New won a website
New.
item. Item from the website.
Yay.
Okay, cool.
Yay.
Thank you.
All right. Chris.
Oh, he left already, but it's okay.
All right.
It's okay. Do we
I'm
still
here.
get?
I'm here. I'm still
Are you
here.
back?
I'm
Okay.
back. I
I
got
saw you
booted.
leave. And then I was like, wait. Okay, you want a red flashlight?
Yay! Thank you.
I'll find
You
out
can-
what you want.
Tie it onto the drone and fly it into stuff.
No.
Okay.
I would.
It's too bright.
So we're done with the door prizes now?
No.
No.
Okay.
Oh, got some more? Okay.
Casimir?
Narski won a laser.
Yeah, he's here.
Okay.
I heard a yell.
Yeah.
He's super excited.
Awesome.
Oh, shoot. We got, hang on just a second. I screwed up here.
Obviously, Tim won again.
Yeah, I screwed up here. Hang on a second.
Conspiracy here. Tim keeps
Hang on.
winning everything.
Hang on.
And he's picky about it too.
What do I get? 2 hats?
No, you got a flashlight, you got a laser, now you're getting a hat.
All right. Hang on. Jeez. All right. Sorry, I can't display it at the same time. And so let's see. Next one is.
Oh, we're done.
Oh, we're done? Okay.
That was
Okay.
it.
All right, good. Okay.
Hey,
All right.
Alicia?
Yeah.
Alicia, what did Carol win this time?
Another Amazon gift card. So I have to send
Another-
you like
Okay,
I owe you
another
like
Amazon
$50
gift card.
because I meant
Wait.
to do it on Sunday.
So what you need to do is mail it to me.
Yeah. Mail
Okay.
it.
I
thought
mean,
was
yeah,
gonna
I mean, email it to email
Yeah,
the
I'm
link
gonna
to me.
email it to you. Yeah, let me make a note of that.
Got $50 now. Hey, if we keep going, we can get that laser finder for Ford.
No, but remember, you have to. You don't get as much when you need a stamp. The minute you ask for a stamp, you're screwed.
Do you ever tell Carol that she actually won something?
Yes, he's sitting right here. She's not in camera view. You don't want to see Carol in camera view now.
It's not a pretty picture.
Okay.
Hi,
Elizabeth
Carol.
says hi, Carol.
We love you, Carol.
Hi, Beth.
Okay, so are we done?
I think we're done.